Good morning, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier, President of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. Good morning.
Good morning, my friend.
Doing all right?
Yeah, thank God. What about you? Yes?
I was able to wake up on this side of the grass, Father. That's always a good day.
That's always a good way to start off the day. I mean, because if you didn't wake up on the right side of the grass and you're on the wrong side of the grass, this show would be impossible, folks.
Well, that's a good point. That is a good point. Father, there's a lot of concern these days about the rise in crime. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would be an interesting topic. You know, George Soros, one of our favorite targets, funded, actually...
He's our favorite people, George Soros.
Favorite target. In 2000, I have to read this. In 2005, George Soros began funding the Progressive Prosecutor movement. And Soros believes that the entire criminal justice system is systemically racist. The only way to fix the system is to dismantle it by electing pro-criminal and anti-police district attorneys.
I love that term. You know, first, there's two terms in there that really, you know, they burn my tuchus, folks. You know? Progressive.
Yeah.
And I mean, that has a very good connotation. So the way words are manipulated these days, they're really very, very deceptive. And how could you be pro-criminal? I mean, right. Pro-criminal, that means you're for crime. But you know what? From George Soros, I think I got it straight. He's for crime.
He's a Marxist. What can I say?
Well, and what are the rules of Saul Alinsky for Marxism? Create chaos in society. And so what do? You empty out the jails, let all the criminals out on the street, and you have chaos, and society can't function. And then what happens? Then what happens is you get the dictator that comes in. You have the communist state that comes in.
You have anarchy first, right?
Yeah, sure. So you let the criminals. That's anarchy, sure.
And that's, fortunately, we don't see a lot of that here in Florida.
No, and how come?
Well, because we have a conservative legislature and Senate and a conservative governor, but we also have law and order sheriffs.
That's right. And like right here in Collier County, I mean, we have Sheriff Rambosk. I mean, he's a terrific sheriff. We're very blessed to have him. And then over in Lee County, Sheriff Mercino. I mean, these are two very good sheriffs, and that's why we have a place where people can live in peace and harmony.
Yes. Now, we go to New York, and as you know, Father, we still have a place up in New York, my wife and I, so we spend a little bit of time up there. And it is, I mean, it's out of control. Anything less than homicide, they release the person with a promise that they will come to court. And if they don't come to court, well, they issue a bench warrant, but, you know, until they find the person, they don't have time to pursue.
We'll catch up with you eventually. The next 25, 30 years maybe, we'll catch up with you. And then the statute of limitations runs out and you're kind of off the hook. Do I got the picture straight?
It certainly feels that way.
Folks, I wish I weren't right all the time, but I am.
Well, it's, I mean, if you want to see a city that's a wonderful city that is out of control, Rochester, New York, all you have to do is go on X, formerly Twitter, or Google it. There is a progressive government in Rochester, New York. I'm talking about the city.
Why do we got to say progressive? Can't we say regressive?
That's what it probably
folks,
should be.
We're changing the name now. It's not progressive. It's regressive because regressive is the truth.
Well, liberal was the truth, but they thought, well, people get the wrong idea about that, so we'll change it to progressive.
Well,
right?
We know what that means.
And just, you know, it's a, what's that adage? It's a leopard by...
Well, you know,
whatever.
The same spots on a different zebra.
There you go.
That's what you mean. I know. You get what I mean, folks, you know.
That's a new adage.
It's a new adage,
that one. So, do you see the tide turning, Father? Do you think the pendulum is swinging back in the other direction?
You know what? I think so. the average person knows that there is something radically wrong. I just heard on the news a little while ago, folks, we're going through the trial of President Trump up in New York City. And I'm told that he visited Harlem. As a matter of fact, I saw pictures of it. And he was cheered in Harlem. And it was in front of that bodega where a man shot another man who was trying to rob his bodega. And the owner of the bodega ended up on Rikers Island. And the people, when Trump arrived, were yelling, 4 more years, 4 more years. So do I think that things are changing? Yeah, certainly people in these high crime areas, they don't want to live like that. You have a minority of thugs. That's what they are. They're thugs living in those areas, wreaking chaos there and making life miserable for the people that live there. So I think people are looking for law and order. Now, the key to this whole thing is, whereas the average person might recognize there is a problem, who are the average people subject to? They're subject to the politicians that are in those areas, and they have control of the government in the local area. They also, to a great extent, have control of the people because they are the ones that also control the police.
Right.
And in some instances, they control the purse too, insofar as different programs in the communities are concerned. So the key is, do the people who are in leadership recognize there is a problem? And even if they recognize there's a problem, do they want to fix the problem because they are holding on to their power, their control? Capisci? I mean, that's Italian. I mean, do you understand?
Isn't that the issue with all politics?
Yeah.
That we have too many people who are trying to hang on to their jobs, and in order to do that, they need to raise money, and so they spend more time raising money than they do governing, and they're not necessarily voting for their constituents as much as they're voting for their job.
Their job, yeah.
And in many instances, they're voting because they're told to vote that way,
right,
by whoever, the speaker, the majority leader, whomever.
Yeah, yeah. Let's face it. People want to hold on to power, and that's been the goal of politicians throughout history, and that's why you end up with dictators, right? Let's go back to ancient Rome. That's how Julius Caesar comes into power. He becomes a dictator, and effectively it puts an end to the republic. We can be in that circumstance right now because power is consolidated within a class of powerful people who do not want to ever leave office. Hence, folks, the importance of term limits, it's very, very important. We have to have term limits because if we don't, we just entrench the power within the same group of people. And of course, those people are interested in control. Controlling who? Controlling you.
It's I don't know. It's an issue that, how do you solve that? The politicians are not going to vote themselves term limits, although they did vote the term limits for the president.
They did.
After FDR wouldn't leave office.
Right. But the Republicans, I believe, were in control at that time. I believe they were in control at that time.
So I think it was during the Truman administration that that 22nd Amendment was passed.
Yes. And it was passed, I believe the Republicans were fearful of a repeat of 4 more years of a Democrat, or 16 years, because Franklin Roosevelt served 3 years, 3 terms, 1 month. And then Harry Truman came in. So that's what was the impetus behind pushing for the 22nd Amendment.
I would guess that FDR might have been elected a 5th and 6th term.
Well, that was the fear.
Yeah.
And you know what? And it was legitimate fear. And I'm not just saying it was because the Republicans had the fear. I believe, certainly to get it through, a lot of the Democrats had the fear too. What do you fear? You fear a dictatorship. And certainly, we look back at history, we see what happens with countries where you have one person or one family gets control of the country. But I don't believe that it should have stopped with the presidency. It should go to the House and the Senate too. When I ask some of our politicians for running for office for the first time, I would say to them, "Are you for term limits?" "Oh yeah, I'm for term limits." "Well, Congress, how many terms?" "3. That gives you 6 years." But, it seems like once they get in, they forget about that. And they are convinced that the world can't live without them, that their people need them. You know what happens to folks? You get somebody in Congress, a politician, if he or she is good at their job, they are able to bring home the pork.
Mm-hmm.
And people like that. Local district likes that. They get good at their job. They get good on certain committees. They know all the ropes, all the ins and outs of Washington. They know how to get their programs included in like $1 trillion budget. The pork.
Well,
the pork.
And that's the argument for no term limits, that they, know the ropes and they should stay in, because otherwise you'd have somebody new and they wouldn't know how to make things work. And I don't know.
Well, you learn.
Right.
You learn, and then you move on. But somebody has to come in with some fresh ideas, some new programs, and somebody has to come in and say, "Hey, look, this pork it's not pork. It's crap. That's what it is. And it's taxpayers' money. That's why we have a $30 trillion debt."
34. 34 just went over 34 trillion.
That's right. Yesterday they added 4 trillion more yesterday. I mean, you keep on passing these omnibus bills, which have everything in them from the war in Ukraine, Gaza, protecting Taiwan, to the number of traffic meters that you could have in New York City. I mean,
we're going to take a break, but
Yeah.
I will tell you, I also read yesterday or today, I forget when, 37% of the United States Treasury budget is now going to debt service.
unbelievable.
We'll be back right after this. But for the moment, I'd like to talk to you about the expense of airing this program. Many people don't realize how expensive it is to produce this program and to get it on the air. Would you care to guess? It's about $3,000 per week. We think that's a reasonable expenditure, but obviously it's an expensive one. So we need to ask for your help. If you'll go to actionforlife.org and click on the donate button, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, you can donate once or you can donate each month, and we certainly have viewers who do both. We appreciate that. Please take time now to visit actionforlife.org and click on the donate button. Thank you so much for your support, and may God bless you always.
Hi, folks. Over the weeks, you have become more and more familiar with our program, Conversations with Father Orsi. I know that you are enjoying the programs because you tell me that you do. I want you to be sure that you should never worry about missing an episode, because you can go to actionforlife.org and catch all of the episodes that we have produced over the last year. Now, also, extra added bonus, you can watch my homilies, my weekly homilies about the Sunday readings. That's also on actionforlife.org. Lastly, both of these adventures, conversations and the homilies, they cost money. And I'm going to have to ask you if you can help us out, because so many of you tell me how much you enjoy the program. Some people tell me our Sunday wouldn't be the same. We record the program, we watch them during the week. This is an expensive enterprise, and we think it's an important way to get out the gospel message and to talk about those issues of the day that are important to us as Christians. So please go to your website, actionforlife.org. There is a button you can click for donations, and please be generous to us to keep this show on the air. Your Sundays will not be the same without it.
Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier. Father, we started out this morning talking about George Soros, not necessarily Soros, but his money and how he's trying to influence liberal politics. I'll tell you another way. George Soros just bought up $400 million worth of debt in a company called Odyssey. Odyssey was formerly known as Entercom, and they're the second largest radio broadcaster in America. They, a few years ago, acquired all of the CBS radio stations. So they own significant radio properties around the country. Soros is going to, they were in bankruptcy, and Soros bought up a bunch of bonds that are going to be converted to equity. So Soros will be one of the largest shareholders in this company, and he will have control over several hundred radio stations. That's a scary thought, that one person who is extreme as Soros and his minions are could control that share of public voice.
You know, it's an amazing thing for me to even think about something like this. Weren't there certain laws regarding monopolies?
Monopolies, yes, but also there were laws on ownership that, ironically, the Reagan administration, when they were deregulating the telephone industry,
Right.
the National Association of Broadcasters managed to fold into that telecom bill a deregulation bill for radio. And most Congress people who were in office at that time will tell you, you know, I sort of knew it was there, but we were really focused on the telecommunications industry, what was happening with the phone business, etc. I don't think anyone realized until after the fact that all of a sudden there could be, I don't know if you call them monopolies, but certainly oligopolies, oligopolies, because you have three companies that control the majority of radio stations in America. Just three companies. And
You worked for them.
I worked for Odyssey when it was
Right.
when it was called Entercom, yes. There is also some speculation, and I should add that it's at this point pure speculation, that number 2 and number 3 could be merged together and there would not be a lot of overlap. And so Soros could ultimately control, I don't know what the percentage would be, but it would be the majority of radio stations in America. Now think about what mischief that could result in.
Oh my gosh. Control of the media is one of the ways that the regressives gain control over society, because they keep messaging. And you keep messaging, and your message is going out to millions of Americans of every age group. You've gotten control of the country. You've gotten into people's heads, and they see reality according to what you're telling them reality is.
It's the big lie. If you tell it enough times, people believe it.
Yeah, I mean, and could you imagine the power that somebody like George Soros, the mastermind, the Wizard of Oz, behind all these radio stations, the power that he amasses in America? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, BC, because you know the radio industry certainly better than I do. When we talk about the media, I'm hearing that for a long time, the right wing had a little niche, or maybe a big niche, in radio.
There's no doubt about it, which started with Rush Limbaugh, obviously. And no one can explain this, not even my friends on the left who are in the broadcasting business.
Yeah, you have friends on the left. I don't have any of them now.
There have been left-leaning radio networks who have tried to gain traction, and they have not, for whatever reason. Conservative media has done, or conservative commentators on radio, particularly some television, have done extremely well. I mean, a good example is our friend Glenn Beck, who will be presenting here in Naples October 30th.
Whoa! All right, here's a commercial. When is this going to happen, BC?
October 30th at the Naples Grand Beach Resort. Glenn Beck will be live and in person. He'll be having a conversation with Father Orsi.
Yeah, Glenn Beck's been begging me to have a conversation with him. I said, okay, Glenn, come to Naples and we will have that conversation. And folks, it's going to be right before the election.
Right.
So
it's Thursday night. The election is the following Tuesday. So
how about that, folks? I mean, you better get. How do they get their reservations for this event?
actionforlife.org/events, and you can buy early bird tickets are discounted. So actionforlife.org/events, and you'll see the link for the Glenn Beck appearance.
And you can have pictures with me and Glenn Beck if you want.
So back at it.
All right, here we go.
I don't know why liberal media has never taken hold on radio. Now, obviously, it has on television. If you look at Rachel Maddow and Joe Scarborough, and
and my favorite, Whoopi.
Yeah, right. Well,
Whoopi.
I don't know that Whoopi's anything other than certifiable. I mean, she is a real whack job. Ugh. And too bad, because at one time she was a good actress.
Yeah, she was.
Now she whatever. She's off the deep end. I worry about control of media by certain voices that can out-yell voices from the other side.
Yeah. BC, let's just go back to, the radio situation. Certainly if Zaros gets control of all of those stations, he has a lot of influence in America. What happened with AM? Isn't there something about getting rid of AM radio? Wasn't that one of the vehicles that the right wing tried to get their message across? Like Rush used.
In my opinion, AM was almost dead. Mm-hmm. There were some exceptions, major market AM stations, WCBS in New York, WIOD in Miami, that were still doing okay. But for the most part, AM radio was not doing well. Rush was on the air in Sacramento, California, and he was creating a huge buzz. And a former executive from ABC named Ed McLaughlin, who had nothing to do because he retired from ABC, went to Rush and said, I think I can syndicate your program. And they began to sign up stations for Rush, mostly dead old AM stations that the operators said, it's not doing anything anyway. What do we have to lose? Mm-hmm. And I would opine that Rush Limbaugh single-handedly brought AM radio back. Now, since then, obviously we have a proliferation of podcasts, and there are a lot of other choices for audio. And so radio isn't as important a medium as it once was. And so a lot of this stuff is now on FM. And there's actually the electric car manufacturers, starting with Tesla, want to take AM radios out of the cars.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They somehow it interferes with the operation of the car. An electric car is really a computer on wheels. But the National Association of Broadcasters is saying, oh no, you can't do that, which frankly I think is a bunch of hooey, because most of us don't get emergency alerts on AM radio. We get emergency alerts on our phones.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I got a question for you, BC. Where do we go from here? How do we recapture, or at least get the truth out to the American people? You say AM is DED?
It's, obviously AM radio's there, but I don't think anybody under the age of 50 ever listens to AM radio. There's no reason to. Even if you want to hear conservative talk, it's on FM.
Yeah.
So you are either listening to FM or to, Pandora or Spotify or Sirius XM. There are just so many places where you can get, where you can hear voices. But a lot of those places on both sides of the political spectrum are echo chambers. And I personally think it's important. I want to know what they're saying on CNN, Father. I know what they're saying on Fox. I want to know what they're saying on CNN. By the way, do you ever watch News Nation? It's they just hired Chris Cuomo. So it has been a sort of conservative network, but now they bring on Chris Cuomo, which is interesting, although he's not nearly as liberal as he was on CNN. Anyway, it's on a lot of cable systems. I frankly don't remember if it's on here. I was in upstate New York recently, and I was watching it up there. But they, I think, do a pretty good job of trying to present both sides. Because the other problem is if you only listen to Joe Rogan, you only get Joe Rogan, right? And it's easy to believe that Joe Rogan is, right about all things, but that's not true of anyone.
Right. Except me. See, folks, if they put me like on MSLSD or something like that, I mean, you would get both sides. It happens to be that, I see both sides the same way. Now that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But I mean, you call up CNN and MSLSD and all those other places, and you tell them to put me on. I mean, I'm sick and tired of these pablum pukers. Excuse me. I'm in trouble.
Well, now you have a chance to wrap up the show. Last words, Father.
Hey, folks, look, we're talking about crime, and look, a lot of this stuff is interconnected. Talk about crime. Well, the politicians want control. They control the police forces, controlling the money. They're responsible for crime. You just can't say it's not my fault. Yes, it is your fault. You're community leaders. Secondly, we have to get control, or at least get the story out as to what's going on, to tell the truth. Because a lot of the media is extremely slanted, and as BC explained to you, how the radio industry works. And so if you have, George Soros, that regressive, we're in big trouble, because he's got control over the airwaves, and that's the message that people are going to be getting. Lastly, there's a moral component to all of this. Who is informing the people as to what is right? Who is guiding the people in the radio, television industry? Who's guiding people on the social media as to what is right and what is wrong? Look, it's been in the hands of the wrong people for too long, and that's why we're in the mess that we are in right now. Look, last best hope, and unfortunately, a lot of people aren't doing it anymore. Go to church. Your pastor should be speaking the truth. And if they're not speaking the truth, find another church to go to.
Amen.
Goodbye.
Father, thank you, and thank you for watching. We invite you to join us again next week for another edition of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Until next week, have a great week, and God bless.